Before we get started with the actual presentation, a couple of introductory slides here that I'd like to share with everyone. Mark, if you could go ahead and advance. Oxford Computer Group has been around for over 15 years, delivering services around identity and access management, identity governance, and data protection. We're a lot more impactful than people realize. We've delivered over 7 million Office 365 seats. We've been the Microsoft Identity Partner of the Year 3 years in a row, 2013, 2014, and the EMS Partner of the Year in 2015. And part of our success comes with our long and deep engagements with the Microsoft Cloud Engineering team. That's allowed us to put together very compelling services on planning and assessment, deployment services, and managed services. We specialize in both on-prem and cloud solutions, and we're really well known for our hybrid capabilities. And Mark, if you could advance to the next slide. We've got a couple of upcoming webinars. We're actually missing a couple of slots here in February. But we've got a webinar on traditional perimeter. This is all about the new security model. And we expand on that with our webinar in April, Can I Avoid the Security Transformation? And again, this is a new way of looking at security that's very cloud-based and very much impactful to our target audience. Go ahead and advance the slide, Mark. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and in LinkedIn. Mark is active on LinkedIn. We've got a number of our architects active on LinkedIn. You can get the latest on our events, webinars, white papers, news, all kinds of things. And without further ado, I am going to hand this over to Mr. Riley, who is going to spend the next half hour talking about conditional access and then fielding your questions and answers. I will be monitoring the Q&A throughout the webinar, and those that I think need to be shared more broadly with the audience, I will interrupt Mark and post your questions. So Mark, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Steve. As Steve said, I'm Mark Riley of Oxford Computer Group, and today we're going to talk about conditional access. Start with a bit of an overview. If you attended my webinar last month, be a little review for you. Talk about the access features, what we're trying to drive here with conditional access, an overview of the whole process, take a look at the rules that govern this, and then we're going to take a look at how conditional access works when we're using federation. And the slides are moving on me automatically. I love when that happens. Sorry about that. We'll then dig into a demo. We'll only have a bit of slides, and most of the time we'll spend in the demo actually looking at how this works for the users, what the UX is. Come back, talk about that, and take your questions. So as we've talked about before, a lot of these services are really providing what I consider to be the new firewall for enterprise data. Identity protection certainly leads on that. Office has DLP functionality. Information protection, formerly Azure RMS, gives us security on individual documents no matter where they land. And of course, device management allows us to protect those endpoints. Application management allows us to manage what users can do with the data on those endpoints. And conditional access grants access to that data, whether it be in Exchange on-prem or in all of the online services that we're using from Microsoft. So the conditional access, the idea of this really comes from the concept of a variable user experience. That is, my access to data as a user changes based on where I am, the device I'm using, what apps are being accessed, whether I'm domain joined, registered, being managed by an MDM, any of those things. We may apply multi-factor in these cases. We may look at access and say, that something has happened. It might be a risk-based event that comes from identity protection that tells us we want to up-level, or it may simply be that we've decided that if we're not on premises, we want to have that multi-factor. And we may go as far as denying access based on the state of a number of different things. We talked about lookout last time with Intune, compliance within Intune, at DomainJoined, those kinds of things. So conditional access spans a number of things, and it's been a little disjointed. It's all kind of coming back together. So we can, as we said, talk about IP restrictions, whether I'm inside or outside my organization, or trusted IPs, which I can create a number of entries for. I'm sorry, again, these slides are taken off on me. We can up-level that authentication requiring device registration or multi-factor, or both if we choose. And then for fully managing this, using GPOs and enterprise mobility management to actually manage that device and be aware of what's going on with that device and in control of it. A lot of these settings can be applied in a pure cloud environment, but we gain more granular control for some of these settings when we use some federation, particularly on premises, because this gives us the ability to dig deep into claim rules, and I don't understand why the slides go backwards, I really apologize. And allow us, those claim rules allow us to get very fine-grained about whether we want to allow access or not at a given point, or call for that multi-factor authentication. So this conditional access is extending to rich clients. There are a few requirements for it. All of this configuration for conditional access, when it's device-based, is in the Intune console, even when we're integrated with SCCM. So the IP-based conditional access or claim rules access, those things can be managed outside of Intune, don't require an Intune license, but allow us to do conditional access. But if we're basing our conditional access on the state of the device, then we need to have Intune involved, or some MDM. It doesn't have to be Intune, and it doesn't have to be ADFS. Our authentication options have broadened just a little bit. We've been using this slide for a couple years here, and I didn't get the final Azure Active Directory straightened out properly. We've always had the ability to do a password hash sync, which puts our passwords in the cloud and allows us to run directly from that with no federation involved. Authentication's done in Azure Active Directory, and those passwords are protected up there. We also have the ability to sync the identity with the cloud, but not sync the passwords, and do a federation. So authentication, as you see here, is passed back to the ADFS. Passed back to ADFS where the users authenticated. Our latest change to this is pass-through authentication, where we still use AD Connect to sync the users to Active Directory. We do not sync passwords to the cloud, and there is a connector installed on-prem, or multiple connectors installed on-prem for fault tolerance, that allow us to authenticate on-prem using the DCs in our data centers from Active Directory without sharing those passwords, but without having to have a federation configuration. So those are the different ways that we can configure this. You'll notice the commonality here is AD Connect, and AD Connect is central to conditional access functioning, particularly for rich devices. We have to have AD Connect to put users in Intune because we have to sync those accounts, whether we sync the passwords, we do federation, or we do any of the other different methods like pass-through authentication. I know that this supports federation password sync. It should support pass-through authentication, but frankly, I haven't tested that. So I'm just going to assume that it will work because of what we're doing with these things. But I haven't tested it. I expect to do that probably over the holidays. For device-based conditional access, we're required to have AD Premium and an Intune license so that device can be evaluated. There may be some cases where we're not actually using Intune, but we still have to have the license for that conditional access piece. And we must have modern authentication enabled for Outlook to be blocked during conditional access. That's exactly how it's managed. We can block Exchange ActiveSync for mobile devices at the EAS entry point, but for Outlook rich clients, we have to have the modern authentication. So I'm going to go through a federated configuration here, talk about what needs to be done for that, and show you how that all functions. You'll see some stuff about AD Connect, and of course remember the AD Connect piece is the same no matter how we're doing this. But when we do the federation, there's a few more pieces involved, some claim rules and those kinds of things that need to be applied. So again, we need to have Intune configured. It's not required to do the conditional access, but again, for device-based it is. We want to enable conditional access, or to allow users to succeed on their conditional access. We want to have a workplace join, device registration, and an Azure AD join. All these things come together, and we apply that to our domain-joined machines to automatically set them up for conditional access with a GPO. I'll show you that GPO. It's a simple setting that enables a task which does an automatic workplace join. That workplace join is then synced with the cloud, gives us device registration and an Azure AD domain join, and brings all of this together. If we're using, for this registration, we want to point our enterprise registration from our domain to enterprise registration windows.net. That pushes us over to the Azure side to do that registration, and then Azure just takes care of all of that for us. When we're doing federation, we do have to have some additional claim rules in Windows for Windows 10, because the Windows 7 and Windows 8 devices will perform their workplace join and Azure AD join using a user authentication against federation, whereas Windows 10 machines use a machine authentication to register that device in the background for users, so they don't see anything of it. We have to put in a few more claim rules for that to function properly, and we'll talk about those. So these are the claim rules. We add this account type, which identifies the authenticator as a computer, not as a user. We pick up the on-prem object GUID, which shows the on-premises account. We pass that along. We also, the primary SID is grabbed, and that'll correspond to the on-prem computer account, and then the the user ID, which allows us to take this token from ADFS or whatever STS we're using, and allows us to set that up. There's more information in these. These are actually pulled from this document, which if you want the slides, we'll get them to you. There's more information about those claim rules. So what happens when we attempt to control through conditional access is the user attempts to access the resource, and we first look and say, is this device targeted by a conditional access policy? This policy, of course, is set in Intune because, again, it's a device policy. And if the device is not targeted, that is, the user's not in a group that is targeted, then we go ahead and allow service. Very straightforward. We can also have devices that are targeted by conditional access but have an exemption from that. You may target all users but exempt certain users, and we'll see that. If the user is exempt, then we go ahead and allow them to have access. If not, then we look to see, is the device managed by Intune? If it is, then we look to see if it's compliant. If it's compliant, then we block, if it's not compliant, then we block access. If it's compliant, we allow it. And the last step is to look and see if this is a domain-joined PC. If it is, then we go ahead and allow access. That's the whole process. It really simply says, is this device joined or, is this device registered and domain joined, or is it in Intune? So that covers both scenarios, whether we have a device that's sitting in our organization that's domain joined and registered, or we allow someone to connect and bring that out. So enough of these crazy slides. Let's go out and take a look at some of this stuff. Just to show how real-time this is, I'm finishing up an update on a machine I hope to use here in just a minute, so hopefully that'll work out for me. The first thing we want to do, as we said, was to set up conditional access within Intune. And so let me grab my Intune console here. So I have either one. We'll see which one will sure to force me to re-authenticate here. It's been sitting for a few minutes. I'll go ahead and re-authenticate to that. You see I'm using themanor.com as my domain. That's my personal domain that I use for all of these things. So you see that under here I have conditional access. I have a number of policies that I can set for Dynamic CRM, Exchange Online. This requires a connector, which is set up to talk to the online server. Excuse me, this one does not require it. So on-premise requires a connector. I do not have that set up in this scenario for a number of different reasons. Online has a connector, but conditional access does not require that connector. All that connector does is it allows me to see devices that are managed by Exchange ActiveSync in addition to the devices that are managed by Intune. But this is the policy that we want to take a look at. See that I've enabled my conditional access policy. I've said that for specific platforms, and I've selected those. I could have just chosen all platforms, but this way you can see all of the different platforms that we can target. And I've chosen for my Windows devices that they must be domain joined or compliant. I can choose one or the other, or I can choose both, either or I can select just one of them. If I say, well, they must be domain joined, I don't want to deal with compliant devices, or are they just compliant, I don't want to deal with domain joined. That's fine. I'm allowing either in this case. You'll see that I'm also blocking OA access from non-compliant devices, and we'll see that in just a moment. And I can also block other ActiveSync apps. So essentially the settings I have here say you can connect to my Exchange Online if you're domain joined or registered, and you can only connect essentially using Outlook. One of the reasons we want to drive this is because it supports our device management, our application management. So for MAM, mobile application management, we want to make sure people are using Outlook because that brings us into my circle of trust for these. And then as I target these users, I'm targeting all users to be, all users of Exchange Online to be required to pass conditional access, except I have exempted this group, my MAM without Intune, because that would simply cause a conflict. I want people to be able to use MAM without Intune. If I block conditional access for those users, they're going to have to enroll in Intune to get access to mail. I want to allow them to use it, but I'm going to control their use of that with MAM, so I feel that I'm covered, and that's mobile application management, which we've talked about in the past, I think, and we'll probably do another session on that. So this is the basic setting for that. I have the same setting for SharePoint Online, and we'll see that in effect as well. And also I can set it for Skype for Business, Dynamic CRM, as we said, and the Exchange on-premises as well. Now if we go back and just take a look here, I talked about the fact that I could see devices because I have my connector set up with the cloud. I'm able to see the devices that are managed not only in Intune, but also the devices that are managed by Exchange ActiveSync. So this allows me to, you can see a couple devices here that I don't know much about because they're only managed by ActiveSync. A couple here that are managed by both Intune and Exchange ActiveSync. That's one of my PCs. Even though it shows up as a mobile, that's the PC that's running that. So that's my that's the Intune configuration for that. And now I want to go take a quick look. Let's actually go look at the UX, because we're almost halfway through here. And so we'll take a look at that. Oh, the other piece, let's just show this piece, that in Azure, I also need to configure so that I can do the device registration in the cloud. This is another piece that we need to make sure is configured, and that's under configuration. Pretty sure that we can do this in the new portal, but I'm not as comfortable with that, and all of my Intune stuff's not available in there yet, so I haven't done that. But you see here from the devices, we've set that users may join devices to Azure AD. All users can do that. We don't add any extra administrators. And you see this, users may register their devices with Azure AD. Now that is grayed out because I've set up automatic enrollment with Intune for users who connect to Azure AD. So when users, you'll see that as well, provided this computer reboots here. I can also require MultiFactor to join. I hit MultiFactor a couple times in this demo, you'll see it, but that's because I'm hitting the outside of my federation. It's a different reason I haven't turned it on for this. I can limit the number of devices that users can register, and then whether or not they can sync enterprise data. So roaming essentially is what that's enabling. So those are my settings in Azure for this. Then let's go ahead and find my machines. I think the one I'm going to start with here, let's see if we grab this one. Oh, no, that's still finishing up. So we'll come back to that one. But here's a client that I have. This is just a regular Windows 10 client. We'll take a look and see. I'm logged on here to the actual machine. My user domain is CA Client 02. So I'm logged on as a user. I'm using my Hotmail account for this, so this is just a real basic setup. I chose that I own the machine in the UBI. It could have been DomainJoined and it would have gone through this, but then we would have missed those features. So you can see that even though I'm licensed, I'm all set, and come on, pick up. Oh, there we go. So what I want to do is get this thing to type for me. Come on. Oh, please. Oh, maybe we'll just skip that one. Let's try it again. There we go. So we'll log on to Portal. Well, this will allow me to connect. It probably will ask me for MultiFactor. Oh, no, it's let me right in. So you can see I can get into my admin center. I can get to the basic settings, but when I try and go to OneDrive, it informs me that I'm unable to get there. You can't get there from here, as they say in New Hampshire. And what this is looking for is a domain-joined device or devices that meet the management compliance policy. And it tells me how I can go ahead and do this. I can set it up by choosing to join the work or school and connect, and that'll enroll me because we had that set up in Azure. Actually, I didn't show that, but we can. That's one of the steps. We go back. So I can't get there. If as well, I've blocked access to OA. So if I try and get to OA from there as well, then I get the same thing. You notice this is trying to log me on Azure. That's why I get the different view here. So what we want to do is we actually want to join this computer to the domain and watch the process as this gets registered and gets set up. So this dsreg command is very useful for dealing with this process of domain join and Azure AD configuration. So you can see in here I've got a little bit of settings from the user state that got picked up because I'm a consumer using logonmicrosoft.com and a Microsoft account, and it's showing my WAM GUID. I'm not Azure domain joined, I'm not enterprise joined, I'm not domain joined. I'm not a user of Azure AD at this point. So none of these things are set up, but we're going to change that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up PowerShell and see if I can save ourselves a little bit of time in doing this. And I'm going to domain join this machine. As soon as PowerShell initializes, there we go. So I'm going to add computer. And domain name. And we'll put in the domain cred is, and we'll do a restart. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Sorry about that. And that is the name of my internal domain inside the manor, and domain credits. There we go. And that'll restart for us. Still waiting on my other machine to start. Drag that out of the way and let that is restarting now. I'm sorry, I didn't let you see that, but let me go grab my other machine. We can take a look at some of these settings. So this is my domain controller, also an ADFS server, but you see here is my GPO. Here's my group policy objects. I have this automatic Azure AD join, and that just shows me that this setting is enabled. This allows me to set up the workplace join. What this does is it flips a registry setting on the device that enables a task that does the automatic workplace join and starts this whole process for us. Once that process is kicked off, then we'll see these things flow. We're waiting for the machine to restart. In the configuration, all of these things that I'm showing you, the claim rules, this configuration that we're looking at right here for device registration, all of these things are set up automatically for you with AD Connect if you do an express install with ADFS. If not, some of these things may need to be set up manually. There are PowerShell scripts to enable this, so if this was not set up automatically, it's very easy to set it up. There's PowerShell scripts to test it and make sure the value is there. But really all this does is it simply tells me that we are doing, that we do have device registration set up. It shows the name of the Azure AD that we're using and an Azure AD ID. So this is where the devices find the information from this server connection point, find the information to actually connect to Azure AD and actually do that registration there. So let me go back and reopen my client. It should have restarted by now.
Mark, this might be a good time to answer a couple of questions that have popped up in the window as well. So the first one is, are there any issues with increasing the number of devices that users can register? And they go on to say they're having running into upper limits.
I'm sure there are upper limits. I don't know off the top of my head what they are.
Okay.
If you want to follow up with me, I will we'll find out where that stands. Let me get reconnected it to my machine here. Okay, so you'll notice when I come back on this machine, I'm no longer Mark Riley, I'm Mark P. Riley. That's because I logged onto this machine with domain credentials. As I said, we had joined this to the domain. When this comes back up, of course, it's going to take a minute because it's setting up my new profile on the machine. So that's allowing us to set that up. One of the things I didn't show was I didn't show you that we were actually still blocking Outlook from this, but we can get to that. Steve, do you have another question?
There was a question about showing the registration of an iOS device as well.
Yeah, well, actually, the registration for the iOS device happens through Intune. You can do device registration for iOS. It's really not a part of conditional access from this perspective. But you can do just a straight-up registration of iOS if you want to use it in a claim for authentication so that you can validate that a device is actually registered. There's a certificate placed on the device, and that can be used as not really a second factor of auth. I think of it kind of as a half a factor of auth, if that makes any sense. So here's my... Yep.
What about a Mac registration?
You can do registrations of Macs. You can also do domain joins of Macs, and I believe that I don't think we have the modern auth on there, so we can't block Outlook. Again, another thing that I haven't really dug into deeply. I don't have a lot of people running Macs for desktops. That's a good one to follow up on. If you want to get a name on that, Steve, I'll follow up. I'll pull my Mac out and go ahead and do that. Okay, so I have domain joined. Hopefully it hasn't taken so long that it's actually worked for me, because AD Connect runs the sync every half hour, and if it happens quickly enough, then I don't know why we got Facebook out of this one. But let's try Outlook. Just see if I can get into Mail. Now that I've done a domain join, I think we're going to find that it's not, but we'll see how that happens. See, still telling me that I can't get there even though I have domain joined this machine. That's because not enough has happened on this machine to complete that process. So if we go back out to our dsreg command and take a look at where we are in the process, you can see that I still don't have the Azure AD domain join. I'm still not aware of that, at least as a machine. But if we go look at the task scheduler, and we'll see that the task has run, what has happened is that we have not yet had the sync with our AD Connect. So here's AD Connect. You can see that the last time it ran was 7 minutes ago. So it must have just missed that. I'm going to go ahead and fire it off, have it run a sync itself. So what this is going to do is going to pick up that join and send it off to that as soon as this sync starts working. It's going to send off that information to Azure, and then we're going to sync back information from Azure. So you're going to see 2 cycles happen here, and then we'll probably have a restart of the device as well. So some of these things, particularly with federation and all of these pieces, can take a little bit of time. We'll talk about that and talk about how we roll this out. So here you see an ad coming out of this domain, and this don't worry if a lot of this doesn't make a lot of sense to you. We usually don't dig into this unless you're doing real deep identity things, but this will just show you the piece that's being transferred up from that CA client 02, which is the one that I just registered, and it's telling me that this is the information for it, and we're changing some values. We're moving in a computer join from AD. We're not doing password sync, that's false, but we're doing a provision of that AD join. Once that gets synced up, then we've got nothing coming back from there. We see that there's one more update. This is the same update and that projection, which pushes it out. And then when we go up to the actual site, then we sync those. So now if I go back, we take a look here at my status. Again, still hasn't changed. Nothing up my sleeve. Now we'll run, the sync will run one more time. Let me find the right piece. AD Connect. We'll run the sync one more time, and you'll see that AD join will come back, a confirmation back to on-prem, and as a result of that, the device will be able to look in the local domain and see that it is all set all the way up, and will start to get access allowed for this user. So we see nothing coming up from the on-prem. We go look at the cloud instance, nothing there. We do the sync, and then nothing again exported to the cloud instance. We have one more step here. Oh, that didn't come back yet. Okay, so I'm a little ahead of it. And we're still not seeing that here. Huh. That's not working for me. The joys of a live demo. Let's try this again and see if it's picked up. No, it still hasn't. So what I'm going to do is one more restart of this. And in a second, we'll go look at. So we'll let that one restart. That's my DC client. I have this completed client, kind of my Julia Child model here if we need to go back and look at that. But I'd like to let that one finish. What I do want to look at now is how we're doing the actual setup for the other side of this. So we said domain joined or compliant. I want to show you the compliant side of this, and that's out in my Active Directory. Again, in my applications, I have configured Intune to automatically be my MDM provider. So if I go find my Intune instance, and Intune is configured with these URLs. The URL is the discovery URL where the user will get enrolled. Terms of use, basic terms of use, you of course can replace that, and also it's the compliance URL. I can choose who will automatically be enrolled in MDM, and this could be a third-party MDM, but I use Intune, of course. I can decide whether all users are enrolled in Intune specific groups or no users, and of course I want it set to all users. So what I have here is another machine that I want to log into, and this is again the same thing. It's set up with my Hotmail account. It's not set up, it's not domain joined, it's not enrolled, it's none of those things. It's simply another client that is set up. The idea of this client is that this is a computer at someone's home. This is the PC sitting on my desk at home, and I want access to the server. As you see, I just finished upgrading it, so it's going to go ahead and do all of this work for a minute. So let's go back and see if we can get our DC one back up. And while I'm doing this, Steve, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Password.
Although several people are commenting that they need to take up a collection to buy you a quieter keyboard.
No, that won't help. I'm just a loud typist. It's not the keyboard. The keyboard helps, but it's mostly just me. So we should see this come up and see that this device is actually now provisioned and has set up with our conditional access. And we'll go. Now I'm self-conscious about it. Thanks for saying it. Should have waited till afterwards. Okay. Back to the portal. We go ahead and select mail, and I still can't get there. All right. So this is the troubleshooting steps. ps-reg command status. All right. So now we're seeing that we're starting to get some information back. We are now Azure AD joined. It's giving me some information about it, my device ID, a thumbprint for my certificate, other information, the tenant that I'm located in. You see, I don't have any MDM settings in here at this point, and I don't have the user state set, and it's not aware that I'm in Azure AD. So it hasn't completed this entire process yet. Sorry about that. I'll turn that down. So I'm not seeing that piece of it yet, but that'll come back around again once the sync happens. So this is not, as we can see, this is not something that you want to happen real time. You don't want to turn this on and then have users have to go through this process, because it can take a little while for all of these things to settle. And this is very common with these management scenarios that we have, devices that need to get to a state before they're ready to go. Now, the other method of doing this is through our Intune configuration, which runs a little more quickly, more real time for the users, although it does take a little bit of effort to get there. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. This again, back to my home PC. We'll let the corporate DomainJoined machine perk for a minute, and we'll come back and take a look at my home machine where I want to be able to get access to my corporate mail, but I need to be either DomainJoined or enrolled, and you may not allow DomainJoined for everybody in your organization. It's one way to control access, and you may drive those users instead to go out to Intune to enroll and get device compliance from that side. So let's try this again. Let me catch up to my machine here. It's just a shortcut. Putting the domain name on the end of Outlook allows me to skip my Realm discovery and drives me directly to my ADFS instance, saving mere seconds off the entire process. So this tells me again I still can't get there because I'm not set. So what we're going to do this time is, instead of doing a domain join, I'm going to go ahead and connect to Azure. Excuse me, connect to Intune. And we'll stop having to put in all these passwords shortly as soon as we're all set. As soon as we're all set, SSO will start working for me. So I do have MultiFactor set up on this. So I'll go pull that up on my phone and authorize the logon as soon as I get the prompt. There we go. It's a good idea to have MultiFactor on for enrolling devices. I have it set up just externally for all authentication, so it gets caught that way. I don't have to turn it on in my actual process. So this is going to go ahead and set up Intune with an error. But this will go ahead and do the enrollment. You see that I'm in here. It's all configured. This will actually, if we can go out and look at the process, it's going to do an enrollment into Intune. It's going to validate that I'm properly set up for Intune, and it's going to grant me access to that server. Let's go back to my client. Let's see where we are on this one. Nope, we're still in the same state. And we're still in the same state here. Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do is one more restart of this and get that caught up. We're doing on time. Oh, running short. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of my other machines that we did complete the process on so I can actually show you these steps. That's my DC, that's my VMO2, that's ATO4. That's right. There we go. All right. So which one are we going to grab? Take client of 3. All right. So let me just turn this machine on, and I'll show you what this looks like when we're enrolled in Intune, and I'm hopeful that we'll get the other one finished enrolling, and I'll be able to show you that one as well. So we'll let this client start up. Minimize that one. And here we finally see, that's what I was looking for, is this is the object coming back from the sync. If we take a look at this just shows that out, the device join. So that completes that device join, and then on the next sync we'll get one more pass back. These are now happening at 30 minutes. These syncs, so we'll actually see those things come up. And this is a little slower typing because I don't know that password as well. So we'll see those come back from there. This client that I have here is a client that's set up, enrolled with Intune. I now have the ability to get to all of my services. You'll see I'm using the same account, mriley@themanor.com, through all of these. So the ones that don't allow me access will allow access now. One of the things that the Intune does is there are compliance policies within Intune that I can specify certain things about this appliance or this device that need to be enabled, such as a PIN on it or timeout for password, or each of those things where I need to be enrolled in Intune, and what setups I have to have for that. So PIN, I might have encryption required. I did have encryption required actually at one point. I've taken that away just because it didn't demo well, frankly. Yeah, I'd like you to just open up this app. That would be really nice. Cortana, if you could help me with that, that'd be sweet. So I am using all Office 2016 on here. You can do conditional access as well with 2013. I actually have some machines with 2013, but I've moved on past those. But they work the same way. And if we just go ahead and jump right into my mail here from this device, as you see, is still a local client. It's not a DomainJoined client. And I thought I had this one. Oh, it was ATS. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I'm wasting people's time here. I feel bad about this. I did not actually have the right client. It's ATA02 that's all set up. And I don't imagine that this client has yes, it has. So there you go. This is the ATA4. This is the one I just enrolled in Intune. You can see that now I'm able to get to my Outlook mail. I could also connect through Outlook itself, but I'm able to get to mail here. I'm able now to get to my OneDrive as well. You can see that it'll take me into my OneDrive, which we were blocking before. This is using Intune. I also have the other machine that I have configured for my CA client 02. We'll go ahead and bring that one up, which is the DomainJoined machine. It'll authenticate me. And this will allow us to have access to Outlook and to all of my online services as well as both Exchange Online, OneDrive, each of those pieces. So I see we're running up against the time here. We'll come back to that once it's finished coming back up. Want to go back and let's go back and see. Let's see where we stand with our reg. That's not what I want.
And Mark, since we're running up against time, let me bring up one additional question that's come up. The specific question was about increasing the number of device registrations beyond the default limit of 20.
Yes.
And how you go about doing that.
I will have to determine that. It used to be a much smaller number than that. It's kind of interesting. I would be interested in why you want to have users enroll more than 20 devices, but
in their use case, the users are going from kiosk to kiosk.
Well, in that case, then you don't use this method. Intune supports a device enrollment manager who can enroll up to 1,000 devices, and devices that are enrolled in Intune are automatically registered, automatically device registered, and running them in through a DEM, through a device enrollment manager, means that you won't have that limitation. So you can see here, if you notice when we brought it back up, I didn't even have to log in because I'm on a DomainJoined machine with this user, this M. Riley user, and when I opened up my browser, it gave me single sign-on all the way through. I can go out to my apps. I can go do all of this work. All of these are set up. If I brought up Outlook, I could enroll Outlook and bring mail from there. I unfortunately ran out of time for that.
And we've got another question. How would you deploy this to a large set of users, or do you join machines to Azure AD before distributing these to users?
Wow, Steve, did you make that up just so it would be perfectly aligned with my next slide? So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you roll this all out, because there's great potential whether you're doing conditional access with Intune and devices or rich clients. There's potential to block a lot of people and cause a lot of grief. So in rolling this out, you want to make sure you have all of your infrastructure laid out underneath. So you need the Azure tenant, you need AD Connect. Depending on how you're doing virtualization, you're going to set up AD Connect in different ways. You may have federation. If there's federation, then you need to apply those claim rules. If you're using a third-party federation provider, then you need to install those claim rules in that third-party federation provider. Update the GPO so that we start having our domain joined machines AD domain join and register. register all those devices prior to enabling conditional access, and then you can enable conditional access for groups of users as you move forward. Make sure that if you're going to allow registered and compliant devices, so Intune, then set up your automatic enrollment. And the way that we configure that is through the console, as you saw, where I enabled Intune as my MDM, and also register this CNAME in DNS for enterprise enrollment from your domain to enterpriseenrollment-s.manage.microsoft.com. This is an update. We used to, for automatic enrollment in Intune, use just manage.microsoft.com, but enterprise enrollment-s is the fully qualified domain name going forward, and we should use that. And then as a final step, we start turning on conditional access in Intune to actually affect those users. And that's where you want to be careful, keep your ear to the ground, and make sure the help desk understands what needs to be done if someone comes up against this, and also make sure people understand that they're no longer going to be able to get access to these services from home unless they perform some actions on their machines. So kind of a recap here, conditional access, we can restrict access based on IP, whether I'm inside or outside the organization. I can add multi-factor authentication. I can also apply these to any SaaS apps that I have configured in Azure AD. So IP restrictions, multi-factor, whether it's compliant, all of those things can be built into conditional access for these SaaS apps as well. We have device registration, DomainJoined to cover this, and we can control access from rich clients like Outlook. Unfortunately, I didn't manage my time very well today, so I was unable to show you how that worked, but it does work, and if you'd like to discuss more about it, just please get in touch with me and I'd be happy to talk about it and show you what I've set up. So short on time, but if we have additional questions, I'd be happy to entertain them, and I'm willing to stay as long as anybody's interested within these.
We do have a question about what's on the roadmap for new features for conditional access, or at least what's on the roadmap that you can talk about.
Well, I'm not that plugged into what the roadmap is for conditional access beyond this. This is kind of the cutting edge for it. We're adding on the device side in Intune, we've added additional signals, as we talked about last time with Lookout. I could see additional signals coming into that compliance scenario from other areas as well. So when you look at the building up the conditional access, it's all part of determining the device health, how intrusive you want to be on those devices. So do you want to completely own the device, or are you happy with a mobile device management piece, as we saw with these devices? So it really is just bulking up the risk assessment, and that's where all of this is headed with IP protection, with the identity protection. It's based upon risk. Are you coming from a risky location? Are you doing something that's unusual? That will all fall into compliance and into conditional access as well. So it's, as I started out in the beginning, that none of these are a piece of their own. They're really dependent on all these other items. So information protection feeds into conditional access, device management feeds into conditional access as well. So all of these different pieces, from identity protection to information protection, can provide signals and information to better give us better information about the devices and the applications that people are using on these various items. I hope that answers. The short answer is I don't have a lot of more roadmap information.
All right, and we're a little bit over time, and that is the last of the questions. So thanks everyone for joining us again this month, and we look forward to seeing you again in our upcoming webinars.